Okay, so here we are back with Elizabeth Clamon, who was my guest just a couple days ago, and she left us hanging. And I don't know if you were as irritated as I was, but Elizabeth is a storyteller and a speaker and a #1 best-selling international author with a whole bunch of books and collaborations. She does a lot of stuff, but she has a remarkable story. And if you haven't heard last week's or the last video that we did, you need to go back and listen to the other part of Elizabeth's story. But you kind of left us hanging, Elizabeth, with a car accident that you had that ended with smashing into a semi. So please take us to the rest of the story.
The rest of the story. As I was saying, we were headed into Michigan from a camping trip. So we were pulling a 35-foot bumper pull with our Suburban. And we had a semi truck in front of us that had not gotten over. We were in construction headed into Michigan. And for like 12 miles, there had been signs that he was supposed to be in that we were shifting to the shoulder and the outside lane, and he was supposed to be in the lane. They don't want trucks driving on the shoulder, obviously. We stayed in that lane because we'd had a blowout on our camper earlier that day, and we did not, we didn't know, we knew all the tires were about the same age, so we didn't know if we were going to have another blowout. We needed to stay close so we could get off at the exit. Well, he was still in front of us, and my mother-in-law had called about dinner, and we were going to go to dinner, and I had turned around to answer my 11-year-old son's question in the back seat when all of a sudden I saw out of the corner of my eye my husband hit the brakes with both feet. And I thought, you can't stop a camper like that. I've been traveling around all over the country with this camper within the military with all our moves as our temporary home,
Right.
and I knew you could not stop that fast. That truck had thrown on his brakes and stopped on a dime.
Wow.
My husband stomped on both feet on the brake, both feet on the brake, and the next thing I knew, I was about halfway turned around. We were skidding. There was crashing and metal crunching and smoke, and my 11-year-old son in the back seat is screaming at the top of his lungs. And I couldn't figure out where I was or what had happened or what was going on. Then the phone started ringing and I couldn't find the phone. And my son was screaming and I kept saying, I'll get to you. I'll be there. I'll be there. I'm coming. I'm coming. But I couldn't figure out where I was going or how to get there.
Wow.
Next thing I knew, my husband crawled through the seats into the middle seat of the Suburban, laid down on his back on the seat, and kicked the window out with both of his feet.
Oh my goodness.
Could not get out of the car.
Wow.
My 16-year-old daughter, her and her sister had been driving my husband's truck, following us because we had met them in Kentucky. Remember, I was down there, so we met them in Kentucky. So we hit the truck. The camper hit us. Our 16 and 18-year-old daughters hit the camper with the truck, and the camper hit us again.
Oh my goodness.
So in the course of about probably a minute in time, my life was changed forever.
Wow. Oh my God.
My husband kicked out that window. My 16-year-old was at the door trying to jerk the door of the car open. And I asked her later, I said, Brittany, did you think about what you might have found when you got to that car? We were under the back of a semi truck.
Oh my God.
The engine was in on our feet underneath us.
Oh my gosh.
And she said, I didn't care. I just needed to get you out of there.
Wow.
So he yelled at her to get away from the car, go to the shoulder of the road. My other daughter had already gotten out of the truck and was over on that side of the road. He kicked the window out, told my son to unbuckle his seatbelt and to crawl over it, picked him up and carried him to the side of the highway with his sisters, and then came back to the door and told me to unbuckle my seatbelt, climb between the seats, and come out the window. I didn't know how to unbuckle my seatbelt.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't know how to get out of the seat. I was just completely confused. I had no earthly idea how to do anything. So he crawled back in the window, came between the seats, unbuckled my seatbelt, and gave me step by step by step instructions to get out, put me on his back, and carried me to the side of the road
Oh
where
my
my children
goodness.
were. I didn't have my shoes on. I don't like shoes. I don't have shoes on right now. I do not. I was born and raised in Louisiana. We just wore shorts and t-shirts and no shoes. So I hate shoes. So I had kicked my shoes off. I was reading a book. And, so he had to carry me because there was all the broken glass and all the liquid from the engines and all that was all over the ground. All of our cars are sandwiched together behind this truck. And he put me on the side of the road with the kids, and immediately mom mode kicked in. And I've got to check my kids. So I start checking one by one. My oldest daughter has scrapes and cuts from the airbag, but it seemed like she was okay otherwise. My middle daughter was okay. She didn't seem to have anything but a few bruises. Then I went to my son, and he said, "Well, my stomach hurts." I pulled his shirt up, and he was bruised from his rib cage to his pelvis bone, just as black could be.
No.
And I thought, he could have internal injuries. I'm asking him all the questions. Do you feel faint? Do you hurt?
Wow.
Does your head hurt? All of these things. Because he had, at 11, we'd been on this big long car trip,
Right.
and he had put the belt behind his back and just
Oh,
had the lap belt on.
oh boy.
And we had a free-sitting TV VCR combo on the folded down seat in front of him that he was watching a movie on. That thing could have flown across. It did not move.
Oh, wow.
The seatbelt had bruised him all the way up. So I'm looking at that. My husband, in the meantime, is on his cell phone, pacing up and down the interstate behind the cars because all the traffic has stopped at this point. And all of a sudden, he just falls out in the middle of the interstate.
Oh,
And
no.
I am on the phone with my mother-in-law, my daughter's phone with my mother-in-law, telling her what's just happened, and that I don't know where we're going. We got to go to the hospital. I don't know, what hospital we're going to. And then he just falls out in the middle of the road. Highway 75, Interstate 75, going into Michigan.
Oh my gosh.
And I went, Arnold just fell out in the middle of the road. I got to go, and hung up on her.
Wow.
Now, as a mother-in-law, I would have just completely freaked out.
Yeah.
So I ran over to him, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" He goes, "I just needed to sit down." I'm like, "Do it a little less dramatically, please." I've just been through this ordeal already.
Yeah.
So I noticed he had a big knot and his shin was bleeding, but otherwise he seemed to be okay. He was on the phone with the Air Force Base because he had duty the next day, and he needed to let them know he wasn't going to be there for duty, and he needed to let them know that we were involved in an accident, because they need to know where you're at all times, and your family, and they make sure you're okay. And
Yeah.
so he was doing that. And so he gets up, and we all go back over to the kids, and the police have shown up by this point. One police officer, and the police officer said, we need to move you away from the vehicles. By this time, the semi truck had rolled forward. So he was no longer, we were no longer on the back of his bumper because he had rolled forward. Apparently, we were at this bridge that was decorative, and it had this archway that came over, and he didn't think he could clear the archway. So he slammed on his brakes because he thought the top of his tractor trailer was going to hit it, which was why they were telling him to be in the other lane in the first place. Mm. So the police officer said, we have to get you away from all this wreckage. There's gas, there's oil, and propane tanks that generally ride on the bumper of the camper. One is crushed on the back of the camper between the Suburban and the camper, and the other one is crushed and shot underneath the guardrail. And they're both leaking propane.
Oh my gosh.
And immediately I thought, My dog is in the truck. Both of our dogs were in their kennels in the truck with our daughters. And I thought, I have to get my dog out. I went from, checking on my kids to dog mom. Got to get my dog. My dog's got to get. So my husband and the police officer went to the truck and lifted out my daughter's dog. And I'm like, no, my dog has to get out. I was very impatient. And I tried to pick his kennel up myself. He weighed 65 pounds. So immediately when I tried to pick his kennel up, I started having chest pain and I started having trouble breathing. Well, I have asthma anyway, so I thought it's just my asthma from the stress and all of that.
Right.
So by this time, they get the dogs out. They're in their kennels on the side of the road. My middle daughter remembers that the cat's riding with us because we took the cat on trips too, and he walked on a leash, and he just was free in the Suburban. So one of the truck drivers that stopped to help went and crawled back through the car and got the cat out, and had the cat's clawing him because we're on the middle of an interstate highway. My daughter, she's just so good under pressure, which I envy because I'm not. She grabbed her pillow out of the truck, pulled the pillow out, put the cat in the pillowcase, and held the cat close like this.
Oh,
So
wow.
he didn't fall anybody, and he would calm down. And the EMTs had shown up by this time. So the guy is standing there with the EMT bag and the oxygen. And I'm like, I'm having trouble breathing. I can't catch my breath. And he never offered me any oxygen. He never put me on oxygen, not anything. It was the first responders from the fire department.
Wow.
And so the same truck driver was still there helping us. I will never forget. It was a Brinks truck driver. I will never forget his uniform or his face. And I said, I need my inhaler. He said, where is that? I said, it's in the Suburban. So he crawled back in the Suburban a second time, got my purse and my phone, and brought them to me. And I took some hits on the inhaler. It didn't help. And then the ambulance showed up, and they said, you need to get in the ambulance first. They looked at my son's stomach. They put him on a backboard and strapped him down, called a second ambulance, and put my oldest daughter in and bandaged her hands, started me on oxygen and an IV, and the breathing wasn't getting any better. So the second ambulance got there, and they loaded my son up, and they're like, we have to go now. We have to go. We don't know what his injuries could be. We don't know why your mom's having chest pain and can't breathe. We need to go. And my daughter's like, I am not leaving. My dog's on the side of the road. So the police officer is like, I swear to you, put the cat in the back seat of my car in the pillowcase. So she tied a knot in the pillowcase, put the cat in the back seat. And this police officer is like 6'6", and she is 16. She's on her toes in his face. If anything happens to my animals, I will hunt you down. And she's not kidding. This is my daughter that now runs a horse farm and has a miniature horse at home, a 150-pound Great Dane, and 2 other dogs and a cat. I mean, this is my animal lover. So the police officer's like, I swear to you, gives her his card with his personal phone number on the back. So just as they're getting into the ambulance and we're getting ready to pull away, animal control showed up to get the animals because they had to house them while we were in the hospital. And so the animal control guy gave her his card and put his personal number on the back because the police officer's like, she'll come after both of us. And I'm scared. And he should have been. So we finally, about 10 minutes later, we get to the hospital. They've got my son and I back in the regular emergency room for the trauma. And they've got my husband and my 2 daughters out in the other, lower down room. And they're checking them out and everything. And then my son is beside me, but they have a curtain pulled and he's crying and he wants to be untaped from the backboard. And I just open the curtain and let me talk to him. If I could talk to him, he'll calm down. So they opened the curtain and I started talking to him, telling him, everything was okay. And he started calming down. And about that time, my mother-in-law walked in the door. And I have never been so happy to see anybody in my entire life,
Yeah.
because I knew that my in-laws had found us. How they found us, I still to this day do not know, but they found us. They're very resourceful, also military.
That's great.
And so they were going to take my son for CAT scans and check and see how he was, see, what was going on. And I made my mother-in-law swear to me that she would stay with him and not leave his side. So they went down and he's getting his CAT scan, and then they come back in, and the nurse is looking at me, and she said, I'm going to go get the doctor because you are as bruised as your son is, and they're going to need to do testing on you too. So they sent me for a CAT scan. When they wheel me down there, my mother-in-law standing in the hallway by herself. And I'm like, where's my son? What did you do? Where's my son? And she said, they said he had to go in there by himself. They're just doing the test. It's okay. I'm right here. So we sat and talked while they did his test. And then they wheeled him back. And my mother-in-law went with him, did my test, and brought me back. And if anybody who knows me will know that this is the God's honest truth. When I walk in the door of the hospital, unless I'm there to see a baby that's just been born, my first question is, when can I go home? It never fails. I hate hospitals. I despise hospitals. I never, ever want to go to a hospital unless it's for babies. Babies are the only good reason to go in a hospital. So I have been asking, when can we go home? When can we go home? When can we go home? So they wheeled me back down where my son was, and I'm still asking, when can we go home? And he's unstrapped, sitting up in the bed. And I said, what? And they said, he doesn't have anything, just bruising.
Wow.
No injuries whatsoever.
Wow.
Just the bruises.
Fantastic.
A few minutes later, they walk back in the room. And of course, my first question is, when can I go home? And they said, you're not going home.
Oh, no.
You're going to the cardiac ward.
Oh.
They sent me to the cardiac ward because I had a broken sternum. And they thought that I could possibly have damaged my heart or my pericardium, the sac around the heart. Because when you take that's a strong bone. That sternum is a strong bone. And when you take a hit hard enough to break that sternum, it can do some serious damage.
Definitely.
So I spent 5 days on the cardiac ward.
Wow.
And my husband stayed there with me the entire time.
Wow.
Slept in that little chair. He'd been in the same wreck I was in just as much muscle pain and everything from the wreck, but he would not leave that hospital.
Oh.
My in-laws and my kids came every day, brought us food. And I knew I had an injury to my left knee because both my knees hit the dashboard, and my left knee also hit the console. So my knee was swollen and black and blue. And I knew I just hurt, everything hurt. So 5 days of ultrasounds on my heart and cardiac enzyme blood work every 6 hours. They finally determined that there was no damage to my heart, and they sent me home.
Wow, that's great.
I rode home. Of course, we had no vehicles. So we lost everything except for our daughter's little junker car that we bought her, our 18-year-old, that she just was allowed to drive more than like 10 minutes from the house.
Yeah.
So my father-in-law picked us up in his great big 4x4 truck, and we bounced all the way home. I hurt so bad.
Wow.
Nobody told me to take a pillow and hold that broken sternum. So I got home and immediately went to the recliner and went to sleep. And I got up and I said, I have got to have a bath. We had been camping, and I didn't take a shower before we left because I thought I'll just take a shower when we get home. Well, it was 5 days later, and I still hadn't had a shower. I was yuck.
Yeah. Right.
So I told my husband I want to take a shower. So my mother-in-law had already, God bless her, she's a saint. She's gonna hear well done, most definitely. She had already bought a shower stool. She'd she had everything taken care of. And so the only bathroom we had was upstairs. The den where the recliners were downstairs. We had a tri-level. So I had to go up 5 stairs and then 10 stairs to get to the only bathroom that had a shower, We had just had a half bath on the lower level. Got up there, got a shower. Still, I can't lift my arms. I'm just locked like this because I have so much damage and that sternum is so painful. So my husband's drying me off, drying my hair, and I passed out.
Oh no.
I just went right over flat on him. And
Wow.
he starts screaming for his mom. Well, his mom and dad come flying up the stairs. Fortunately, his mom was first. She opened the bathroom door, and there I am, soaking wet, not a stitch on, passed out on my husband. She's yelling at my father-in-law, get back down the stairs, get back downstairs, call 911. They took me back to the hospital by ambulance, did all kinds of tests again. This time I didn't ask when I could go home because they were like, we might have missed something. There might be something wrong. So after another 12 hours in the emergency room, they determined that my pain spiked so high that I passed out.
Oh my goodness.
From the ride home and the climbing the stairs and the movement and all of that.
Mhm.
So when I got home at the second time at the ripe old age of 38, I was 100% Social Security disabled and bedridden for 12 years.
12 years from that one accident?
Years.
Oh my gosh. What was that like?
Horrible. Horrible. But I still had lessons to learn. And I needed to learn that I was not in control. God was in control. And even if I willed myself to get out of bed, I couldn't do anything. And I had to lay back down. Because
Wow.
I had always been a control freak from my childhood. Don't control anything in that trauma. So you grow up, you become a control freak. So I had to learn that I was not in control. And I just continued to have surgeries. I had a spinal fusion. I've had 4 surgeries on my right knee. No, I've had 5 surgeries on my right knee.
Oh my gosh.
Surgery on my left knee. Abdominal surgery and 2 abdominal surgeries. And it was just, at this point, I tell people it's just a repair and replace model. It's just every few years we repair or replace
Oh
something that.
my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And I walked through that really difficult time. And I finally, when I was in 2016, I was having my 5th or 6th surgery. I don't remember. I'd lost count. I was on 120 Percocets a month, 30 Dilaudid for breakthrough pain. And that's
Oh my goodness.
that you could be on. 30 Dilaudid for breakthrough pain. I was getting shots in my neck, shots in my back, and shots in my occipital nerves for migraines.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to have this surgery, and they could not control my pain after surgery because of all the medication I was on.
Right.
I blew 3 IVs, and I was just shaking and sweating and my teeth chattering, and just I was going into shock from the pain. And I just had this moment of aha, just clarity. And I looked at my husband and I said, I'm done.
Wow.
I'm done doing it their way. I'm done. I know how to heal, and I'm going to do it. I had a degree in naturopathic medicine. I knew what it took to heal naturally. There are some things you can't heal from holistically, but
Right.
you can help your body heal.
Right.
So I
Exactly.
went home and I prayed about it, and God and I made a plan. And I wrote that plan down, and I worked that plan every day for over a year by cutting in half 1 pill and only taking 3.5 pills for a solid month. Then I'd take the other half a pill out and go for a solid month with only 3 pills. And I went through until I weaned myself off of all that medication.
Oh my gosh.
Took herbs and supplements to cleanse and help my body. Started eating food that was better for my body, that was healing for my body. And slowly, little by little, I was able to get up and sit in the chair for 30 minutes and then lay back down. And then I was able to get up and stand for 5 minutes and lay back down. And I just continued to do that until I could get back up and I could start pursuing my life. So in 2017, the end of 2017, I opened my coaching and speaking business. And I've been doing that for 3 years.
And you've been traveling around, speaking and walking around.
Until COVID,
Wow.
I have. And I love it. And I feel like I'm completely moving in my calling and completely doing what God called me in 2002 to do. That I went through all these things, and now, they say hindsight's 2020. And it really is, because I can sit back and look at that 12 years, and my son was so angry. And he told me later as a teenager, he said, I was mad at God because I was like, God, every time we move, we find a house, we find a church, and we get busy working and serving. And you let this happen to my mom.
Oh.
And he turned to music. He asked for guitar lessons, and he begged and he pleaded. And my husband and I were just like, another kid that wants to do something that we're going to have to pay for, that's never going to come to anything. And he finally went up to the guy on the stage after church and asked him if he would teach him to play guitar.
Wow.
And my husband came home from church and told me this because I was still in the bed. And he said, I think we need to invest in this. So we invested in a guitar and lessons. And he has the most beautiful gift of music that
Wow.
we probably would have never known had he not turned to that to soothe himself. The way that when David played, he soothed Saul. It was the same way it soothed my son. And he has such a gift and a talent for it. And he has played in praise and worship bands ever since. He was playing songs within 2 weeks.
So the moral of the story here is that you went through the childhood abuse and you had a loss and the grief of family and rejection. And then you had this horrible accident and went through all these years of tragedy. My husband's a recovering pain medication addict. So I really appreciate your story because that is not an easy thing to give up. And he's had 550 kidney stones, so, and Crohn's disease and migraines. So there's a real
causes.
Yeah, there's real reasons why people get on medication and need medication, but now we've just gone to a more holistic diet, and guess what? His headaches are gone. He hasn't had any kidney stones now since we changed things up. And God does heal in different ways, and he uses every single thing that we've been through if we allow him to use that thing. And I'm so glad that your son has made that turn and it didn't turn him off to God. I mean, we all go through anger at times, but I play guitar and sing on the worship team as well. And what a healing tool that is for all of us.
And God called him to that. That was in him. God gave him that gift and that talent. And he is 28 now. He's married to the most beautiful young woman, and they both play, and they both are very artistic, and they both are very, very involved in their church and in the praise and worship band. They both sing, and it's just amazing. And then my middle daughter at 16 just stepped up and started doing most of the cooking, started doing a lot of the cleaning. My husband had to learn how to pay bills. He had to learn how to grocery shop. He had to learn to do, keep a household going. And we continued to homeschool through that.
Oh my goodness. And now the parents that are homeschooling during this pandemic, they're freaking out about, oh my gosh, they're hot, too many.
I'm like, I could tell you something.
Well, you have a very inspiring story, Elizabeth, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be on 2 weeks in a row here, or 2 times in a row, and to share with my listeners this incredible story about how God can and will use everything and bring, like it says in Romans 8:28, use all things together for the good if we love him, because we are called according to his purpose.
Right.
We
And
all
that
are.
is my favorite verse. It's my
Yeah.
life verse. And I clung to that verse with everything I had during that 12 years because
Yeah.
I said, God, you called me to do this. Now I'm laying flat on my back in a bed and I can barely move to even get myself to the bathroom and back. I don't understand. And I think a lot about David. He was anointed, and it was 14 years before that anointing came to pass.
Right.
And it took 12 years for my hard headed self to surrender to God and say, I am not in control. You are in control, and your will be done. If I stay in this bed, if I get out of this bed, whatever you will, I'm doing it. I'm going with it.
Exactly. And that the book that I wrote, Speak to Me, God, I'm Listening, 365 days of meditations for people, that starts with the first step in the 12-step program, that I am powerless
Yes.
over my life, my whatever, your
Everything.
addiction, your
Everything.
circumstances, everything.
Without
And
Christ, we can do nothing.
nothing, right.
Nothing.
And so many people struggle with that. They struggle with the God thing. And my husband and I have been in ministry to people, recovering alcoholics, drug addicts, and homeless people, and they're like, well, I don't believe in that God thing. And then they're relapsing and they're homeless again. It's like, how's that working for you?
Yeah.
How's your way working for you?
Mhm.
Just saying, you might want to give this a try.
Yes.
What do you have to lose?
And my husband and I have ministered in Celebrate Recovery for quite a few years. And it's the same thing when I hear, well, I just can't do it. I said, let me tell you what God can do.
Yep.
God, because I didn't get myself out of that bed.
Right.
God got me out of that bed in his plan and his timing.
Right.
So that I could do what I'm doing now. And so I have people call me all the time. Like when you introduced me a couple of days ago, you said we have a celebrity. People say that to me, and I'm like, no, I'm just a child of God, serving God. And I told God, if you open the door, I'll go through it.
Yes.
I will tell from the rooftops what you have done to me. If I'm speaking to 5 dogs from the front porch, I don't care. I will tell.
Isn't that how God works, though? It says, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will exalt you in due time. He'll lift you up. He'll make you a celebrity, not because you're a wonderful person or because you're so awesome, but because God, in his wisdom and his power, has done that to put you out in front of the world, like so many leaders out there.
That's why he made me. That's why he allowed me to go through everything I went through so that I could turn around and help someone else who's going through to get better. And then he can get all the glory. He gets it all. It's not mine. It's all his.
Yep. Amen. Oh, that preaches, sister. That's my story as well. I was led to Christ by a 16-year-old girl who said, God's got a better plan for you than the sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. He really does. And if you just turn your life over, he can make something out of it. She was such a faithful young lady. And here I am 45 years later, have been, thousands of people that I have shared my story with that have been changed, and it does work. And so I just encourage my readers to listen to your stuff. Go on your webpage, elizabethclamon.com. Listen to your videos, follow you, reach out to you if they need help, need coaching, whatever. My stuff, if you're interested in finding out more about me, I'm at LindaLarsonSchlitz.com. And you can reach us both by our first name and then our website to email us. You can also go on Amazon. All of our books are on Amazon. If you Google us by our names, you'll be able to find whatever we've got out there, right?
They're all on my website too, and I will send you a signed copy if you get it from my website. And it's the same price. And you get a signed copy.
And I would do the same with my book, and mine you can order on my website as well. So I'm really grateful, Elizabeth. You have kept people, walking on eggshells here for a few days, but thank you for coming back and sharing with us again.
Great storytellers do. They keep you on the edge of your seat.
Well, thank you so much. And I'll be looking forward to a couple of new seminars that we will be working together on with a bunch of other speakers and authors, and it'll be great. So
I would like to tell the people, if you don't mind, what I have coming up. I have another anthology coming out that will be coming out in May, and I'm taking author applications. And that's called The Fiercely Unstoppable Entrepreneur. And I want people to tell their entrepreneurial story to help young people who want to become an entrepreneur. Yay. I also have a summit coming up the last week of April entitled same name, Fiercely Unstoppable Entrepreneur. And I have a magazine coming out in June. And I'm looking for featured entrepreneurs and cover entrepreneur. So if you have any interest in any of that, send me an email. I'm under Elizabeth Clamon on all the social media platforms. So you can send me a direct message if you want to. I'm always love to meet new people and talk with new people and give people opportunities to be seen and heard, because everybody has a story.
That's the hope. Help, opportunity, praise, and encouragement. And this is just a typical example. I've been praying for someone like you to hook up with for the last 6 years since I've been online and quit my job. And somebody that was in doing a summit had to back off. You got picked, asked to join. Otherwise, I never would have met you. Right. So I have to say thanks to that gentleman for following his heart, having to step out so you could step in so I could meet you. So you see, that's how God works. So
and when they called and asked me to speak at that summit, she couldn't believe I said yes. She said, "But you said yes." I said, "Of course." I said, I told God, open a door and I'll go through it. So he just opened it. Here I am.
Well, thank you again. I do appreciate it. And we'll have to come back again and hear more stories, because this has been delightful. So
I've got a million of them.
Okay, Elizabeth, we'll be talking soon. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you.